We are here with the winner of the locals at GAG.
Hello.
What were we playing?
We played a bit of Crystron Horus today. So, here to do a deck profile, show you kind of like what I did for my deck. So to start things off, typical package, we've got the 3 Sulfaneer and the 2 Sulfador. These are your crazy cards. If you get these going off, you're pretty much set. So, Sulfaneer, discard any Crystron card, summons itself, and then just pops a card you control. Usually you're going to end up just popping him, because if he is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can summon anything from the deck. Well, any Crystron card from the deck. But he's fluid in the way that works because the summon and pop is all in the same chain. You've got Sulfador. This one is just target, pop any Crystron card on your board, summon itself, and then mill 2 cards. 2 Crystron cards. Then we've got 1 Praesortal. I really like this card because it helps with super funky hands. You banish it and it lets you just summon a Crystron card from hand, Crystron monster from hand. We've got our searchers being 3 Smyger, 1 Thisfern. Smyger will search you you get this in the grave, you banish it, it'll get you any Crystron spell or trap. Thisfern, you banish it, gets you any of the Crystron monsters. So this is basically just 1 extra copy of every single Crystron monster in your deck. We've got tuners being the 2 Tristeros and the 1 Citri. Tristeros is just your crazy card. You've got a weird hand and you think your opponent might interact with some of the other cards, you can just normal summon this. Basically the way it works is if your opponent activates any card or effect on board, lets you summon any non-tuner Crystron monster from your deck and just immediately synchro summon into any machine synchro, which we'll get to that in a bit once we get to the extra deck. Citri, you don't need a reaction, but it's only available on your opponent's turn as long as it's face up on the board. As a quick effect during the main or the battle phase, you can target any non-tuner monster, funny enough, in your grave, special summon it, and then synchro, but you can only synchro into machine monsters with this. But the difference is as long as the target is a non-tuner monster, you can target anything, including other stuff we'll have in the deck. But usually the levels won't line up for some stuff, so you're not going to go for those very often. So that's pretty much the entire Crystron part of the deck. So we'll just pick that up. Then for monsters, that's done. And now here is your spells and traps. So 3 Inclusion, 1 Clusters. Inclusion's just a crazy card. Activation lets you add any of the Crystron monsters. So everything here is up for grabs if you activate this. Usually this can be fairly decent ash bait depending on what your actual hand is, because a lot of people don't know what this is going to go into, but a lot of the other stuff is a little more telegraphed. Yeah. Right?
Well, you have the freedom to go into any of that.
Exactly.
So it's like you get always grab the missing piece.
Exactly.
Or worst case, that's what they bait the interaction on, and then you can actually get your starters
like,
going.
This one you can grab anything in this pile with. And technically, you can even grab the trap because it just searches a Crystron card specifically, not a monster. You're not always going to go into the trap off of it, but if they let it go through and you have just extension out the butt, you can still go into this. Clusters, crazy pop card. As long as you target any face-up card on the field, so you can even target your own stuff if it'll let you kind of extend a little bit more. And that's just the cost. As the effect, you shuffle any Crystron card from your grave or your banish back into the deck and you pop a card. If you happen to have a Crystron synchro on the board, you can target 2. So at that point you can even use it to target your own stuff to dodge certain effects and take an opponent's card with you. So that's the full Crystron part of the deck. So then next we will go into the Horus package. So starting off, nothing too crazy. You've got the 3 Mcetis. Happy, and then I run the dog as well, but I only run 2 Sark.
I was wondering if it was 1 or 2.
Yeah, I only run the 2 Sark. 1, it lets you open up a little bit another spot, obviously in the deck, but it can be super funky at times because let's say you already have one in hand, right, and you go Mceti effect.
This is Yu-Gi-Oh! Yes, sir.
So if you go to use Mceti effect and then this is ashed, you still have this plus your Mceti already engraved. So then you can just start discarding like crazy.
You should go anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. And all of the Crystron cards want to be engraved, so it's this entire stack is literally is discard spot fodder. These are not only crazy effects because they give you a layer of protection. If instead he's face up on the board and any card leaves your board from an opponent, the card effect, just non-target send a card to your opponent's grave. Happy, this can keep up recursion or take away pieces from your opponent because you target any card, 2 cards in either grave or banish from either player, and just either shuffle them back into the deck or add them to hand. The only issue is both targets have to do the same thing, so you can't choose one to go into deck and one to go into hand. They have to do the exact same thing. This one just becomes a really big body. It's usually a free level 8 for XZs or Synchro on something I'll show once I get to the extra deck. But if a card leaves the field while this is face up on the board and you have a bunch of names, you will draw way too much for your opponent to keep up with, because if a card leaves the field, you draw 1 card for each monster you control with a different name. It doesn't have to be a Horus, it's just a different name. So that's the whole Horus package. Fairly small, but it's the most straightforward one.
And shiny.
And shiny. Now we're getting to the hand traps and other cards. So start off with the 3 Ash Blossoms. 3 Droll, because way too many decks are just adding card after card. I only will add 1 Fuwalos, and if you're sitting there thinking to yourself for a second, why only 1 Fuwa? I'm broke. This is all I got.
He's got a secret though. He's got a secret.
Oh yeah.
Come on.
Scoot those over a little bit. So still tech choices. Got the droplets. This is pretty much just a no-brainer. Your opponent can't react to your cards, and like I said, the whole deck wants to be in the grave. Everything just loves the graveyard. So like I said, this is a no-brainer.
Man puts down a QCR droplets next to the 1 food.
That's why he's broke.
This is my bro.
That's
and this right here.
That makes total sense.
And the ashes.
And the ashes too. I forgot about the QCR ashes.
So I'm running.
We got to show those off.
Well, that's why we won Fua, guys. That's why.
The Fua had to pay for the sins of droplet, my entire Horus package, and the ashes all being really shiny.
That is very fair. Understandable.
Continuing on,
They paid off today.
I have 3 super polys.
The clean speed duels.
Oh yeah.
By the way.
Super poly is just if you don't really have a whole lot of interaction. This gets rid of a literally just yoink 2 cards off your opponent's board. They can't do anything with, can't react to it, and what the deck likes and wants to be in the grave. So this is also discard fodder. So you best of every single world you could ever want for this deck. Foolish, obviously, because like I said, deck wants to play from the grave. It can get you a lot of starters, and then rounding it off with 3 Imperm. So some nice stuff, but nothing like too crazy here. So from there, we'll move on to.
I'm really curious about the extra deck now after the 3 super polys as well.
So
And a Horus package?
And the Horus package.
Moving on to the extra
I was like,
deck.
I gotta see what this man's cooking.
I'll put that off to the side. It's just my tokens.
It's shiny tokens.
So Clockwork Knight, it's in every deck. Or if it's not in your deck, you need to put it in. It's literally just get Smiger into the graveyard. Because Smiger can only activate 1 of its effects per turn, so if you think you can use like Smiger effect to target itself, pop it, bring out a tuner, you technically can, but then you're not going to get the search off of it. For my actual Crystron extra deck, I've got 1 Amtrix, 2 Eska, and Quarian. This is pretty much everything you're going to have for the Crystron part, except for the XZs, which I'll get to in just a second, but you can probably take a guess at those. So the Crystron, the XZs cards we'll be using with the Crystrons is obviously just an Infinity package. So now I'll go into each card. So Amtrex, easy, level 5 body. If you don't have a Fistfern or a Smiger engraved, but your opponent is already interacting with your board and you have a Tristeros, pull out either or that you need. Usually it'll be Smiger, but if you need another body in hand just for discard or anything else, you can grab a Fistfern. This thing's level 5, so you can overlay with either your level of other 5 bodies just to make the Infinity package. The extra piece is if this thing is Synchro Summon, turn all special summon monsters your opponent controls into defense position. If it's pop, you can summon any Crystron monster from your grave that's not a synchro. Esqueletus, main bread and butter for the Crystron synchros. If it's on board, it's got a nice extra effect that it really didn't need, but your opponent's monsters lose 500 attack and defense. That's not one per copy, so if you happen to have both out, which actually came up today, they lose 1,000 attack and defense, so actually doubling up on this allowed me to beat over a Chaos Angel in the later rounds. Then Quarian. This one is super funky on when you want to go into it and how often you go into it. You'll have times where you will go into this thing probably every single time you go into somebody, or not at all for the entire day. So what it does is you need 2 tuners plus any number of non-tuner monsters to create it. It's level 9. But if it's summoned, you banish monsters from your opponent's field and their graveyard up to the amount of cards you used for its synchro summon. And then if this thing is popped, you can special summon any banished card that's yours or your opponent's. So that's for that grave effect. And then going back to Esqueletus, the reason this card is super insane, I wanted to touch more on this one, that's why I skipped over to the Aquarian, so I can give this a little bit more focus. So Esqueletus, as I explained already, the effect was just on board, but when this thing is synchro summoned, specifically synchro summoned, so not when it's special, it will add you any Crystron card from your grave or your banish back to your hand. If it's popped, you can special summon any Crystron monster from grave or banish, including itself. Both of those effects are synchro summoned locked though, so if you special summon this back with like inclusion or even its own effect and pop it again, you're not going to get that effect, but it's still crazy that you can basically use it with Tristeros, get your 2 free bodies, bring it back out, reduce your opponent's attacks on all their monsters to try and swing for game a little bit easier. Just crazy, crazy card. Infinity, pretty much everyone should know what Infinity does. You go into 2/5s, go into Nova, flip it, go into Affinity, you have an Omni Negate. Not too much to explain there, just Infinity package. So that's all the extra deck that has to deal with any of the Crystron cards. At least for your main deck Crystron cards, I'll have some cards in my extra deck to show for your opponent's turn. But everything to deal with the Horus stuff is just Vampire, Zombie Vampire, and Photon Lord. Monster Negate for Nib if you're scared your opponent has it, or just Extension to try and get something into your grave if your hand is a little funky. So the super poly targets I ran are Swamp Dragon, Garura, and Adignister Golem. So I've seen the Guard Dragon fusion kind of floating around, and while I do like the idea of it, my only concern is that you can't, because this is usually going to be used into Malice. Unless there's some sort of Salamangreat deck running around I haven't ran into yet, or just straight Math Mech, there's not too much to this card, but the only issue is the Guard Dragon fusion can only fusion summon using 3 Link monsters. So if they're only at 2 monsters, or you are going against one of those weird decks like Salamangreat, or
this is not a guarantee.
Yeah, it's not a guarantee. But if you're, yeah, it goes for Bomber too. It works with smaller boards. So because all this requires is 1 Cyberse and 1 Link monster to make. If this is fusion summoned, this is another reason I really like this card. If this card is fusion summoned, it has an on summon effect. For the rest of the turn, you cannot take any battle or effect damage. If you swing into your opponent's monster with it, it gains the attack of the monster you are battling. And then obviously Garura and Swamp, because these are just the most versatile with Super Poly.
You can also link 1 Smyger. If they got a Cybers, you can link 1 Smyger into the link 1 and then use Super Poly.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, because that becomes a target now. So during your opponent's turn, here are the synchros for the quick effects. Samurai Destroyer, either to swing in and negate certain effects, or this lets you play under Niv. If you basically if you have a board up and you have Tristeros that you haven't used the effect of, you go Chain Link Tristeros, you summon out your Sulfador or Sulfaneer, go into this. This leaves the board, and then you just summon any machine monster from your grave that you want. And then Dawn Dragster is pretty self-explanatory. It's a spell trap negate. It turns into level 5 if you use that effect, so now it's a free body to just synchro summon with as well. And then the one sauce card I'm running, because I have so many level 8 bodies, even though I can't do it on my opponent's turn, I can still hard make it, and it's come up, funny enough, actually quite a bit often against Malice, because it's too big for them to beat over, is I'm running a singular Ching Ying. Like I said, the deck is constantly banishing to do all its searches, so you can trigger this at will, no questions asked. It's gonna get really big as the game goes on. This will push any grind game into your favor so fast it's not even funny. I've literally had a game where it was this in defense against a Malice player. It was this in defense. I don't remember what my back row was, but it was this in defense plus 1 infinity, and they just couldn't get past this because I had so many cards banished by the time I passed my turn from searching so much. That's everything for the main and the extra deck. So now we get the side deck going. So first card is 3 DD Crow. This is a just in case card. It doesn't go into the deck super often, but this is good against Blue Eyes, Mitsurugi. At least I find it to be good against Blue Eyes, Mitsurugi, White Forest, stuff like that. When they have very key pieces in the graveyard that they need and want back, you just immediately just
Did it come up?
Not today, it didn't come up. I did side it in, but it never actually hit my hand, and I was able to play around, luckily, still. But that's it. It's just take a key piece away that they might use for extension or even starting pieces. Next 3, Ghost Bell. Ghost Bell kind of speaks for itself. Anything that wants to play from grave, or even Malice, here you go. You know, this is, for this deck, because it plays from grave so much, is both an offensive hand trap and a defensive hand trap, and I really like the versatility of that. The only issue is it doesn't hit enough stuff to justify going in the main deck over Ash, Troll, Imperm, Droplet, or Super Poly. But at the end of the day, I still really like having Bell available to this deck, just because, like I said,
everything else.
Yeah, it's just super versatile for this deck because it's both offensive and a defensive hand trap. So moving on from there. Card everybody should know. If you're not running it, I don't know what you're doing with Malice in the format, just Lance it. You know, past turn, tribute, they have to try
and Crystron in the format.
You know? Yeah, so funny enough, yeah, because this hurts the hell out of me too. So really, if you're not playing this and you see this, you really should be playing Lancia. That'll be one thing I'll add. Stop drolling Crystron, start Lancia and Triptron. If you see how many cards are adding to hand and you keep track, it's actually from grave. So put the drolls back in the side, replace them with Lancia.
Unless they already have that extender or combo piece.
It's done.
They don't need
it's
it
over.
anymore.
Yeah, it's fully done. Like, we only need to search one time, and then everything is pretty much coming from the grave. And half of that is banishing our cards from the grave to get those searches. So while yes, we can't get those searches, it still allows other pieces like Incursion to be able to, Inclusion, be able to banish to add up to special summon a monster back to the field, so we can just keep extending all day. But Lancia can't do the Inclusion, can't do any of the searches, you just lock the whole deck down into a very funky position. Next we've got 2 Chaos Hunters. I've thought about cutting these. They're nice, but I feel they are very fragile at certain times just because they are a body. Yeah, while they just sit on the board, neither person can banish, but not neither person, your opponent can't banish any cards at all. But it's still a body. You can imperm this, you can droplet this, you can just swing into this. You can do so much with this because it's an effect to summon it. You can be Purge or Impulse, whichever one negates the summon. Yeah, Pulse.
They can thrust and then go after you.
Yeah, exactly. I summon this, I can just, so I've sat on the fence for quite a while for cutting this. I'm still running it just because I'm not sure what I would exchange it for.
It's locals.
Yeah.
You already put, let's say, is the Phantasma the next card?
That's most likely going to be it, is trading it out for Phantasma. 3 Nib, everybody's summoning their entire deck right now. So if you hit them at the right time when they go to try and summon any of their negates, usually it can just be a blowout. But yeah, you know, Nib kind of speaks for itself. Everybody knows what Nib does. And then the one extra deck side card that I have for Mitsu and Ryzeal is High Speed Weight Hagoida. It's a level 5, super easy for the deck to go into. As a quick effect, it can tribute itself, and it changes your opponent's field. It decreases their level by. It decreases all cards on the field by 1 level. So it can really, really make some funky plays for your opponent, especially if they're on pure Ryzeal. Mitsu Ryzeal, they, depending on hand state, they can play a little bit more through this, but this can, in a lot of cases, be just a hard stop card. Now in Malice, you'll never see this though. And that's pretty much the whole deck.
Well, Christian, GG's. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.